September 22nd, 1999, the third installment of the Resident Evil series reaches the home console. Originally planned as a spin-off title, it focused its gameplay on more action-oriented sequences than the previous games. The game's graphics were above average for the time, a large number of the enemies were present in the game, offering some good variety. Jill Valentine returns as the main character, but the reason that this game is remembered at all is due to the titular enemy encountered within it, Nemesis.
Listen, he's coming for us. We're both gonna die. He's after STARS members. There's no escape.
20 years later, Nemesis has cemented himself as not only one of the most iconic Resident Evil bad guys, but one of survival horror's most notorious enemies in general. He's up there with Pyramid Head and the Gatherers from Amnesia. He is a purpose-built killing machine. He's named after the goddess of vengeance from Greek mythology, and he's dispatched by the Umbrella Corporation to hunt and kill all the members of the Special Tactics and Rescue Service, because they know all the shenanigans that Umbrella has been up to. Resident Evil 3 is a decent story in its own right when we're not talking about Nemesis exclusively. It's kind of a sequel and a prequel to Resident Evil 2. It's like a simultaneous event in Raccoon City. Jill Valentine sees that the infection's running out of control and she tries to grab some survivors before escaping the city. She runs into Nemesis, her buddy Brad Vickers gets murked, and ultimately Jill becomes infected and passes out, and while passed out is when Leon and Claire show up to the city. They notice that things have gone to shit and they promptly try to escape, but not before finding more Umbrella secrets and blowing up a lab. Oh, and killing zombie Brad Vickers. Jill at this point wakes up and she has some more encounters with the survivors, mainly some Umbrella mercenaries, and she dips the fuck out before a nuke is dropped onto the city. So while Leon is having the worst first day ever, Jill is dealing with a rocket launcher toting gargantuan with no concept of personal space. Oh wait. Resident Evil 3 is when the franchise started shifting to a more action-focused affair. It was subtle in this game, adding things like a 180-degree quick turn, a nice little dodge move, much more ammo being provided throughout the game, as well as some ammo crafting and decision-style quick-time events that made everything a little faster paced and more action-forward than its predecessors. It eased the transition into Resident Evil 4, which was a survival horror third-person shooter, and then Resident Evil 5 and 6, which were pretty much full-blown action shooting games. The setting of the third game is another factor that deserves to be mentioned as a unique ingredient. Yes, it takes place in Raccoon City like Resident Evil 2, but this game actually takes place in the city. Resident Evil 1 and 2 were both practically only indoors, which created an iconic mood and atmosphere, especially in providing that claustrophobic fear that the games are known for. But the third game took most of its levels outside. You go through the police station, a hospital, a factory, an office, and a clock tower, and more. It's a much more grand setting for the franchise. It took everything from the first two games and it just made it bigger. In the first game you get dogs jumping through the window, in Resident Evil 2 you get a small gang of zombies through the window, and in Resident Evil 3 you get a freaking Nemesis through the window. Jill Valentine is also just a solid character in gaming, one of the top female protagonists that there is, especially seeing how there isn't many in the survival horror genre to begin with. She's just badass, she holds her own against whatever is in her way, and she has one of the most satisfying action star phrases in all of gaming right before she wastes Nemesis for the final time.
You want stars? I'll give you stars.
And on that topic, let's get back to why we're all here, why this game is worth bringing up, the only reason that this game is involved in any kind of Resident Evil discussion. You know his name. While Resident Evil has created tension in prior games with slow, shambling threats that require thought and evasion to how you handle them, Nemesis is not going to take it easy on you at all. He's a faster, more aggressive version of Mr. X, and he follows you for nearly the entire game, and sometimes he has a rocket launcher.
You motherfuckers is crazy. Look at that big motherfucker got a rocket launcher.
He has the speed of the hunters, but he's nearly invincible, requiring a boatload of lead to put him down. Sure, you can try to run, but surprise, surprise, this monster can chase you through rooms. Yes, his big ass will squeeze into any hallway that you try to escape into. A lot of the Nemesis appearances are scripted events, and that'll lose some luster on a second playthrough, but there is still a couple of random encounters that'll leave you never feeling too comfortable in the game, especially if you switch up your live selections. He's the definition of a tension builder. He is always there, somewhere, fast as fuck, running at you like a linebacker to an unprotected quarterback. He has a special encounter music that plays when he's in the area, so you get a little heads up when he's on the prowl, even though you may not know exactly where he's coming from. It's kind of like the radio in Silent Hill. It warns you that an enemy is close, but it almost makes the tension worse because you have no idea where they are exactly. All of his attack moves hit hard, and his grabs are the toughest to escape in the game. You have to nearly break your controller to get out of his meaty hands. You can avoid most of the Nemesis encounters, but fighting and defeating him yields some crazy good incentives like unique items and weapons. For example, parts for the STI Eagle and the first aid spray box. And in the battles that you are required to fight Nemesis, they are some of the toughest moments in the franchise history, especially the one right after he shoots down the chopper and he infects Jill. But some are as simple as yeeting him off a bridge like Euron Greyjoy did to his brother in Game of Thrones. Nemesis robbed any sense of control that you can feel in a survival horror game. Most survival horror games are good at keeping tension high, but I don't think anything kept me more alert than that lurking undead behemoth. No matter how many times you knock him down, he just keeps on coming. Even after unloading on his grotesque remains and having a nuke dropped on his freaking head, you sort of expected him to get up and be a recurring monster in the franchise. There are many scripted monstrous scenes in games that make you pucker your butt, like the worm in Dead Space and the Dahaka in Prince of Persia, but nothing else really captures the randomness of Nemesis. All these monsters show up during scripted events similar to Nemesis, but they aren't a fight. They're more like a vague QuickTime event. When Nemesis shows up, he shows up. And then if you try to avoid him and run, he'll just follow you through several rooms. That was unheard of in games at the time. The only games that mimic this tension well that I can think of right now are Alien Isolation and the Resident Evil 2 remake, actually, with the new and improved Mr. X actively searching the station for the player throughout the game. Just imagine that Mr. X, but being able to sprint at you, and he's carrying a rocket launcher. Nemesis is the embodiment of fear, especially in a situation when you aren't prepared. Ammo or health may be low, but he doesn't care. He is assigned to kill, so he will. There is no ego in his terror. Resident Evil 3 is one of the standout titles for me in the franchise. It's most likely from that nightmare-inducing cover art for a young me. It was scarier than the Resident Evil 2 N64 cartridge that I kept face down on my shelves at all time. The game was a little spruce up added to the RE timeline. It broadened the setting for the franchise thus far, and it brought back badass Jill Valentine from the first game, and it exemplified tension in survival horror. I love to hate it, but I don't hate to love it. I'd like to give a shout out to my friend over at the Checkpoint Show. I'll post a link in the description of their video talking about a potential Resident Evil 3 remake and the best way to approach Nemesis in the new age of gaming. I highly recommend you check it out and show some love at their channel. As always, thank you for watching. Peace.
Everybody let me hear you say, oh yeah, hold your hands in the air and wait for my you just don't care. And if you like fishy grease and all that pimp shit, everybody let me hear you say, oh